Hey, I'm Kevin, and this is HFX by Bike, a channel all about getting around Halifax by bike. Not too long ago, I made a video about the city's efforts to make the Halifax Commons and the surrounding neighborhoods more bike-friendly, and added my own thoughts about what I'd like to see as somebody who bikes through the area almost every day. There was way too much ground to cover for a single video, so I've split the whole thing up into two parts. In part 1, I covered the city's proposed changes to the Commons itself and everything west of Roby Street. In today's video, I'll be covering everything east and south of the Commons and tying up some of the loose ends I left in part 1. I can't assign homework, but I'd recommend watching part 1 before jumping into this video, as I'm mostly going to be brushing past the changes I made in that video unless directly relevant. North Park Street sits at the eastern edge of the Northern Commons, bracketed by a roundabout at each of the intersections with Cunard and Cogswell. The street already has painted bike lanes, but they sit sandwiched between traffic and parked cars, creating a dooring hazard for anyone using them. The bike lanes cut out before the roundabouts, meaning that cyclists either have to merge into traffic on the road or use one of the available ramps to access the multi-use path on the Commons itself. As an aside, yes, you caught that right. There are bike lanes and a multi-use path running along North Park Street that are somewhat redundant with each other, and still, neither of them are fully integrated with the roundabouts capping the street. At the Cogswell roundabout, the multi-use path allows bikes to cross the eastern portion of Cogswell, Trollope, and Ahern, as well as connect to the two-way bike lanes on Rainy. Bikes aren't supposed to cross the western section of Cogswell or North Park Street itself along the pedestrian path. This leads to a weird scenario where whether or not you can use the bike infrastructure to get through the Cogswell roundabout is really just based on where you want to go. Things get even weirder at the Cunard roundabout. Here, none of the pedestrian paths ringing the intersection are intended for bikes. Despite this, ramps have been placed on approach to the roundabout for bikes. Ramps that lead cyclists to paths they aren't supposed to use. Very good. It's not just the fact that the existing bike lanes aren't well integrated into the streetscape. The roundabouts themselves have some surprising design features that make them unpleasant for cyclists and pedestrians that like to use. The general idea of an urban roundabout is to allow free flow of road traffic, but at slower speeds, and at approach angles that make it easy for drivers to spot and yield to conflicts generated by other motor vehicles, and especially to other modes using the roundabout at the same time. This is epitomized in Dutch roundabouts, which typically have single-lane approaches oriented almost directly at the central island to discourage mindlessly entering the intersection at speed. In contrast, the roundabouts on North Park Street are designed to maximize vehicle speeds at the expense of pedestrian and cyclist safety and comfort. The approach lanes are ultra-wide and angled away from the central island. The islands themselves are large, allowing traffic to circle them at higher speeds. That's a heck of a design choice next to one of the city's largest urban parks. In short, the design of our roundabouts largely negates the point of installing them to begin with. Let's start by giving them a bit of an overhaul, and I'll start at Cunard. This design is essentially a copy and pasted Dutch urban roundabout. The first thing you may notice is that the size of the space dedicated to motor vehicle traffic is much smaller. The entirety of it almost fits into the space that was previously just the central island. That's because this roundabout is designed with the intention of cars passing through it doing something closer to 20 to 30 kilometers an hour instead of 50 to 60. I've also stripped out all of the extra traffic lanes leading into the roundabout since, as far as I can tell, they add roughly zero capacity. Cyclists and pedestrians each get their own path through the intersection. I've extended the protected bike lanes from the roundabout towards the North End Bikeway to connect that piece of infrastructure to the Commons. This comes up at the expense of all the street parking along that stretch. I didn't extend the bike lanes on Agricola, but there's obviously space to accommodate that if the city changes its mind at a later date. Predictably, shrinking the roundabout frees up a lot of space. I filled it in by essentially just expanding the greenery around the Commons into it. Moving down North Park Street, the existing painted bike lanes can be upgraded to protected just by flipping the position of the street parking and bike lanes. Based on the measurements from satellite imagery, the new orientation is perfectly in line with the city's design guidelines for how close parking can be to active traffic lanes, so that should be fine. I've knocked out the left turn lane leading to North Bernard Avenue, keeping North Park Street a one-lane per direction road for its entire stretch, and making the crossing between the Commons and North Bernard much smaller. Just like with Wellsford in part 1, I'd like to upgrade the crossing from amber pedestrian awareness lights to standard traffic lights. It's not strictly necessary, but I think delinking North Bernard from North Park Street for motor vehicle traffic is probably a good idea. The entire block is covered by roundabouts, so it doesn't really do anything useful for drivers anyways. It is, however, along a direct corridor for people walking or on bike. Continuing south, we're at the Cogswell roundabout. The dimensions of this intersection are essentially the same as the one at Cunard, with the big difference being that I've made some of the connecting bike infrastructure two-way instead of just one. This is because several pieces of bike infrastructure in the surrounding neighborhood are either two-way bike lanes or multi-use paths, and we need a way to interface them with the bike lanes on North Park Street, which are mostly only ever going to be one way. Currently, all of the off-road approaches to the Cogswell roundabout use multi-use paths, but in the new version I've mostly separated out the pedestrian and cycling paths. In part 1, I left a little bit of a loose end where Bell Road meets the Willow Tree intersection, a two-way bike lane that just kind of ends. We probably shouldn't dump cyclists into oncoming traffic on Bell Road, so let's update the southern perimeter of the Commons along Bell. There's some space constraints here that need to be solved. The status quo is that there are 3 traffic lanes and one-way bike lane, so we need to find an extra 1.5 meters of space to make the bike lane two-way. None of the traffic lanes are especially oversized, so I'm going to pull the grass space between the sidewalk and the road on the northern side of the street into the road space, and then shift the traffic lanes northward so that the extra space gets added to the bikeway. The roads leading to this section of Bell mean that there's functionally only a single lane of capacity, but having multiple lanes approaching the Willow Tree intersection means that the limited signal time can be used more effectively. Moving east a bit, I've copied a design from my original Bell Road Let's Fix video and converted the Bell Summer Trollop intersection into a roundabout. This is largely identical to the ones on North Park Street that I went over just a little while ago, and it'll allow two-way bike lanes coming off of Bell and the multi-use paths coming off of the Commons to interface with the one-way bike lanes on the rest of Bell. Making this intersection a roundabout has a lot of knock-on effects. The biggest is in switching Closeout Street from a one-way street with 1 traffic lane and 2 parking lanes into a two-way street with just 1 parking lane. With this design, Ahern no longer feeds into the Cogswell roundabout, instead having its main direction of travel flipped from outbound to inbound, and its main connection to the rest of the road network being just off of the Cogswell roundabout instead of directly to it. This has the knock-on effect of removing the risk of right-turn collisions into pedestrians and cyclists where Ahern meets Bell. I went over this in the original Let's Fix video, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much in this one. Okay, we've created a pretty good spine of bike infrastructure wrapping around the southern and eastern perimeters of the Commons, so let's try to add a few more connections. The easiest pickup is to extend the already under construction two-way bike lane on Cogswell east of Brunswick up to the roundabout. This 400-meter extension would give the direct connection between the Commons and the existing bike network downtown. This doesn't seem like it would meaningfully impact how traffic would work in the area, especially with the design changes that I've already sketched out, but it would remove parking on the northern side of Cogswell for about a block. Otherwise, this is a free connection. I started off part 1 at the Windsor-Chebucto-Cunard intersection, and for story structure purposes and good transportation design, I'd like to connect what I've laid out on North Park Street back to where I started. Fortunately, when I shrank the Cunard roundabout down to a true single-lane roundabout, I also created a lot of extra road space on Cunard north of the Commons that I can use to complete that connection. The northern side of the road has 2 extra wide traffic lanes and a parking lane, while the southern has a single extra wide traffic lane and a single parking lane. I'm going to drop both sides to a single lane and place the curbside protected bike lane on both sides. This doesn't need to impact traffic or parking along this stretch at all. The main complication is space constraints at the intersection with Roby and Cunard. Currently, the lanes fan out in both directions to give queuing space for cars making turns onto Roby. There's no way to fit bike lanes through this intersection with the turn lanes present. In this mock-up, I've removed the turn lanes at both sides of the intersection, which mostly means either that one of the turn movements needs to be restricted, or we just accept that there's probably going to be a little bit more east-west connection at peak hours at this intersection. I don't have strong feelings about which turn movements should be cleared, but let me know in the comments if you do. Moving further west, Cunard between Windsor and Roby is wide enough to support the bike lanes passing through, although at least one of the parking lanes would need to go. I think there's enough space to keep one, but I'll admit it's a little bit tight. This then leads back to the peanut roundabout I started with in part 1. With that connection made, let's tie the whole thing together. Zooming out and reverting to the status quo map, here's what the bike network looks like today. Painted lanes and bikeways are in yellow, protected lanes are in green, and multi-use paths are in blue. Currently, the multi-use paths are the load-bearing structures of the bike network along the Commons, and do basically all of the work of connecting the various neighborhoods together. In the updated version, I've improved on the existing multi-use paths, either by making them wider or by carving out separate spaces for people walking and biking. But the big change is in the addition of protected bike lanes along most paths of travel. This means that for most trips, going around the Commons by bike is going to be faster than cutting through the mostly pedestrianized park. The overall goal is to make the Commons better for the people using it, while making it easier for the people moving through the area by bike to bypass what are, frankly, intractable traffic bottlenecks. Under this design, bikes can still move across the Commons, but there's mostly no point in doing so. There's almost always going to be a better way of making the same trip. And that concludes part 2. Thanks to everyone who stuck through this entire series. Let me know in the comments which parts you like and which you think I could have done better on. If people make enough interesting suggestions, maybe I'll cobble them together for a part 3 sometime in the distant future, but for now I'm desperately tired of looking at maps of the Halifax Commons. Thanks for watching through to the end of the video. be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos all about getting around Halifax by bike. That's it for this one. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.